Miss, it is Carlenn. The time is precisely 2:14 p.m. I have come to collect the dishes from your lunch today, as well as to accompany you on today's indoors excursion. May I have permission to enter?
I apologize if you found the garlic and rosemary baked fish a bit salty. With the oppressiveness of this storm, we've been unable to procure proteins at the freshness we usually uphold, so we've had to begin salting our meat and fish to ensure their preservation. Well, that is good to hear. I will return later to take your dishes to the kitchen, but for now, I'm sure that you have been patiently waiting for today's indoor outing. Yes. Oh, you've been trying to guess where we are going? Well, allow me to answer that question for you definitively, miss. We are going to the castle's main study today. I felt that this would be enjoyable to you due to all of the curious and fascinating objects on display in the study, as well as your passion for literature. Now that the main study's roof has been completely patched, the plush furniture and the large fireplace should provide a warm and cozy oasis away from this awful monsoon. It is also a fairly quiet and secluded portion of the castle, so you should be completely free to do as you please, miss. How does that sound? Excellent. And oh yes, it should be quite fun. I apologize that I cannot do more for you, miss, but I am elated at how much you are enjoying each of these little adventures around the castle so much. Yes, although yesterday's breakfast company was unexpected. It proved to be fairly pleasant, I must admit. Do I hate Master Krollien? Goodness, no, miss. What prompted such an inquiry? Am I still upset at Master Krollien because of what happened? Well, it is funny that you mention that, miss, because I was actually confronted by Christine and Master Krollien about said incident yesterday evening. Christine approached me while I was doing some dusting in my master's office, with Master Krollien in tow. Christine had a salve that she wanted to share with me that would help with the soreness and expressed not only hers, but Master Krollien's concern for my recovery. Judging by Master Krollien's sheepishness, I could only assume that she was serious. What did I say? Well, to be honest, nothing at first. I was very surprised, but pleasantly so, and I expressed to them both my gratitude before accepting the salve. So you need not worry, miss. Anyway, before we depart for the castle's main study, I have something to give you. Indeed, it is a letter addressed to you from Master Silas. It arrived just this morning. How did it arrive with the storm going on? I was told that a horse demi-human delivered it. Due to their superior speed and stamina, they were most likely the only type of servant who could deliver the letter in this weather, and by my knowledge, the only ones who employ horse demi-humans is the Lady Illsenia Nicolette Volgenheim herself. She hardly ever travels without an entourage of 3 servants, one being her head servant 4, of course, and the other 2 being horse demi-human servants. She is always very insistent on this, in fact. Most likely, Master Silas employed one of them to deliver you this letter. In my master's usual fashion, this letter has been written in a type of code that he himself developed. Naturally, I am well versed in this type of cipher. Would you like me to translate it for you, miss? Very well. Please allow me to discern the contents of my master's letter. I see. This letter has been double encoded, most likely to ensure that should Lady Illsenia attempt to have her servant read the letter, it would be most impossible to understand, let alone transcribe coherently. Very well done, as expected of my master. The letter reads as follows, miss. Dear Pet, I write this letter to you in the hopes that you will not only receive it in a timely fashion, but also dry, and not as a sopping mound of ink and parchment. I remain stuck at the very farm that I left to in a hurry, nearly a month ago. As I'm sure you are painfully aware by now, this dreadful monsoon struck not 7 days past my arrival at Whispering Willow Farm. Thankfully, I was able to find board at a nearby orchard called the Lock, Stock, and Barrel. I have to admit that, although quaint and most importantly, dry, it pales in comparison to the lavishness of Castle Volgenheim, as does my mother's company compared to yours, pet. My mother lacks a sense of humor and whimsy that I have come to rely on from you in the past year. Every day, my thoughts of both you and the castle weigh on me heavier and heavier. It has made me realize something, that you are not only my ward and I your guardian, but you are the closest and greatest companion that I have ever had. This conclusion has caused me to realize something else as well, pet. That time is not only fleeting, but running out. I have been working on something, a massive and intricate machination that will not only ensure the continuation of my family, but of my people, of vampire kind as a whole, and I fear that I do not have the strength to complete it without you. I dare not speak more of this, as I fear that forces will mobilize to confront me, chiefest of which my mother. But mark my words, pet. No matter what happens, you will always stay safe, should you choose to remain by me. I pray that you do. I have also received word via another of my mother's equine couriers that my sisters, Melissa and Melmira, are safe within the nearest city of Heliger. The storm has not hit them as hard as it has the country, so they should return a day or two before Mother and I. With this in mind, please take care to avoid contact with them once they arrive back, should they make greater haste than I. When I return, I will begin accelerating this plan of mine, and I will tell you more in detail once the walls no longer have eyes and ears. In the meantime, stay warm and stay dry inside until this awful storm passes. I will be departing for the castle the moment the last raindrop falls, I promise. Yours truly, with all of my best, Silas Sanguinem Volgenheim. Although I know you cannot read it, I will leave the letter for you here on your nightstand, miss. You have a question? Of course, miss. Ask away. What do I know about the big plans that Master Silas talked about? In truth, miss, this is the first time I have ever heard of them myself as well. As I've said, Master Silas is not a man without his secrets. A trend among the Volgenheim family for sure, but the only one with even more secrets than my master is Lady Volgenheim herself. Not to mention their father, Lord Siegfried Volgenheim, wherever he may be, of course. As Master Silas's personal head servant, I am in no position to question his actions or motives, though, and my trust and faith in my master has never wavered. Whatever this grand machination is that he speaks of, I truly believe that it will be for the betterment of not only his family as a whole, but all vampire kind. My master has always had a clear vision of the future, and although he has never shared this vision with me, I know that his path is true, and that I will forge it for him in blood myself if I must. That aside, it sounds as if Master Silas and Lady Illsenia are both safe, as well as the eldest Volgenheim sisters. Hopefully, this torrential downpour will cease soon, and they will all be able to return back to the castle, safe and sound. In the meantime, try to worry not, miss. It will only turn your days even grayer than this weather has already made them. Speaking of, are you ready to depart for the castle main study now, miss? Excellent. As usual, please allow me to... My apologies, miss. One moment, please.
Verona, what are you...
Carlenn, you know that I would not interrupt you in your duty to attend to your master's ward in his absence. But, at the moment I require your assistance. Now.
What is it? Is something wrong? Has another leak sprung in the transport?
No. I have just received word from some of our scouts that footprints have been found around the castle grounds.
Oh. Well, a courier sent by Master Silas just arrived this morning to deliver a letter to the humans. So it is possible that...
Carlenn, they don't match signature tread on the bottom of any of the servants' shoes, castle or otherwise.
Where did you find them?
They were found outside the castle, forming 2 consecutive rings around the entire perimeter. It appears they may have stopped to meander around the side that the Lady Volgenheim's personal bedchamber window looks out, and there are mud tracks and scratch marks indicative of some kind of rope hook. found on the roof shingles near the library by Elvie when she was checking if a recent patch was still holding.
I see. Thank you for coming to retrieve me below. It is possible whoever left this track had anticipated the rain to do just that, wash away any evidence of them being here. Does Mistress Lilibet know yet?
No, I have not spoken to the mistress of this just yet. I felt it was wise to confer with you first before we broached the subject to her.
This is serious. Let us gather Elvie as well, so that we may acquire as much information as possible before relaying it to Mistress Lilibet then. We will leave at once. Allow me to say goodbye to the human first.
Make it quick.
My deepest apologies, miss, but it appears as though something urgent has just come up. Is everything all right? Oh, yes, of course. Nothing you need concern yourself, miss. Unfortunately, though, I will not be able to accompany you to the main study. But worry not, the main study is quite easy to find despite its distance from your room. Simply take this hallway all the way down the left. Pass through the grand foyer, take the first right, then the third left, and then you're there. Should you become lost, do not hesitate to ask any of the servants you bump into for help. All have been informed of who you are and your relation to Master Silas, and any of them would be more than obliged to help you. Again, please accept my deepest apologies, miss. I will see you again soon, all right? Please depart for the main study whenever you are ready. And remember, miss, all the way down the hall on your left. Take the first right, passing the grand foyer, and then the main study will be the third room on your left.
Oh, human, it's you. Shh. Master Krollien is sleeping. Come in, come in. Well, go on, miss. Take a seat. Well, Christine and Miss just keep on running into each other, don't they? What brings you to the main study, miss? And where is Mr. Carlenn? Surely you did not walk all the way over here alone? Oh? He had to leave on urgent business? Mr. Carlenn needs to learn to relax a little bit. Has Christine heard about anything weird going on lately? No, Christine has not been made aware of anything. Mr. Carlenn looked worried? Oh, that's just how Mr. Carlenn's face always looks. A servant probably just slipped and fell off the roof again, trying to patch yet another leak. Speaking of which, is that why Mr. Carlenn wanted you to come visit the main study, human? Because the leaks have all officially been patched? It is neat in here, isn't it, miss? This room is Master Krollien's favorite in all of his childhood home. Well, actually his bedchamber is his favorite in Castle Volgenheim, but the main study is Master Krollien's close second. Huh? You were wondering why Christine and her master have been spending so much time in here lately? Well, Christine and Master Krollien have been doing some research. Research. Besides the fact that Christine and her master have been enjoying the largest fireplace that Castle Volgenheim possesses, Master Krollien and Christine have been poring over history books lately. That's why there are stacks of books everywhere. It's been a pretty slow day today, and with the warmth of the fireplace and the pitter-patter of the rain, Master Krollien eventually dozed off in his chair. Master Krollien looks so peaceful and serene when he sleeps that Christine has just been content with watching him while she leafs through this book. Watching over him, she means. Ha ha. What? Why have Christine and her master been going over ancient history books lately? Christine supposes she can tell Miss, but Miss has to promise her that she won't tell anyone else. Got it? Good. Well, recently Master Carlenn has been trying to look into the history of the Nine, since the Volgenheim household is a descendant of one of them. Has Miss ever heard of them? According to what Christine knows, the Nine weren't always known as the Nine. Apparently there were 10 of them, but no one knows what happened to the 10th, nor are there any records of where he went or who he was. All we know is that he was a king of some coastal nation whose name has been lost to time. Apparently he was the bastard son of the former king, destined to never take the throne. After he became a vampire, though, he usurped his father, and shortly after, he and their entire kingdom, now called the Lost Kingdom, vanished without a trace. It's not even marked on any maps anywhere, if it ever was to begin with. So, everybody just calls the first vampires the Nine. How did the Nine become the first vampires? Well, according to a very dusty tome that Christine found a few days ago, the Nine were chosen for reasons unknown by Phantasmagoria itself to become its heralds here on Eden. What? Miss has never heard of... Miss has never heard of Phantasmagoria? Oh, wow. Well, as Miss knows, the world that we mortals call home is known as Eden. But there exists another world besides that of heaven and hell. Some call it the reverse side of the world. But since the world is a globe, it's more accurate to say that Phantasmagoria is Eden's shadow. According to legend, before there even was a world, there existed two primordial gods, Hyperion and Thea. Together, these two gods created the mortal world as well as the two realms beyond. According to ancient tomes, they began by creating the world, little more than a giant rock floating among the stars, followed by the cardinal court, the gods that govern creation today, which they put into a deep slumber to be awakened when the first inhabitants of the world were created. Unfortunately, Hyperion and Thea apparently didn't get along very well at all. In fact, it sounds like they hated each other's guts. Hyperion represented light incarnate in the universe, whereas Thea represented all darkness. Hyperion was harsh, idyllic, stalwart, and righteous. Unfortunately, though, like the harsh sunlight of summer, he was also intense, indiscriminatory, and quick to anger. Thea, on the other hand, was gentle, kind, nurturing, and protective, like the soft light of the full moon. But she was also mysterious and underhanded. Before they could even begin shaping the world into what we know today, Thea and Hyperion quarreled ceaselessly over how they would govern their children, and how the cardinal court should tend to the world, until eventually they came to blows. In the end, they destroyed one another. Hyperion's body fell to the world and became the Eden that we all know today. It is said that humans, Hyperion's children, were created in his image and were born of his hopes and aspirations, and that his life force turned the world verdant and lush. His heart became the sun, which the first humans named Helios and worshipped. Thea, on the other hand, fell into the shadow of the world, her remains twisting and swirling into what we now call the Evernight, the Shadowland, the Noctis Imperium, or Phantasmagoria. Thea's dreams became all the monsters and shadows and creatures of the night, and her heart became the moon, named Selene by the first humans. According to legend, when the moon moves out of the sky to give way to the sun, it passes through Phantasmagoria to rest and renew its pale light. Pretty amazing, huh? Even if it is all a little confusing. What about demi-humans? Oh, demi-humans, also known by their original name, the Faunus, came later. When the Carlenn court first introduced magic to Eden, it began to take root in not only the forests, but the animals themselves, molding and reshaping them to suit their newfound dreams and aspirations, eventually creating the first demi-humans. Oh, Miss had already heard snippets about the prehistory of the world, but never the full story? Well, there you go then. Christine guesses it makes sense that Miss hadn't been taught much about phantasmagoria since Mrs. Human and all. Well, humans really don't like phantasmagoria all that much. Phantasmagoria is the realm of darkness after all. It's rumored to be where all the monsters, nightmares, and darkness are born and come from, isn't it? Why would any human like it? Miss just thought of something? What is it? And shh! Try not to be so loud. Yes, actually that's why a vampire's special power is called a Selene's inheritance. In fact, it's not so much that vampires draw their power directly from the moon, so much as phantasmagoria itself. From what Christine understands, it seems more like the moon acts as a sort of conduit. Since the moon regains its light from phantasmagoria, the fuller the moon is, the more able it is to bathe vampires in the power of phantasmagoria. Oh, right. Anyway, somehow phantasmagoria itself, whatever that means, granted 9, or Christine guesses 10 humans its power, turning them into the first vampires. Master Krollien's family, the Volgenheims, are direct descendants of one of the 9. But, so far, Christine hasn't been able to figure out which one. Their names are not very well recorded, and some went more by titles or nicknames instead. Are any of the 9 still alive today? Well, vampires aren't immortal. They just live incredibly long lifespans. So, probably not. Especially since this all happened thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. What? Miss doesn't understand why phantasmagoria would grant so much power to humans when they're from Eden? Christine doesn't really know either. Maybe just to sow discourse or cause trouble, or maybe for no reason at all. Does phantasmagoria have any god or gods of its own? Christine doesn't know that one either, but none of them are ever mentioned. It's more described as having a will of its own, honestly, but that's about it. Not much is known about phantasmagoria, since there isn't exactly a way to just go and visit it. Oh? So, why have Master Krollien and Christine taken such a keen interest in phantasmagoria and the first vampires all of a sudden? Well, Christine knows that Miss promised not to tell anyone about any of this, but Christine and Master Krollien could get in a lot of trouble for this, so Christine needs to know. Does Miss really, really, really promise that she won't tell anybody about this? Not even Mr. Carlenn or Master Silas? Because if she did, it could get Master Krollien in a lot of trouble and would make Christine very, very angry. Good. That makes Christine feel better. Well, about a week after Lady Illsenia and Master Silas left, after the monsoon had already started, Master Krollien started to get very agitated and impatient that Lady Illsenia had summoned him all the way back to Castle Volgenheim for an apparently big family meeting, commanding that none of them may leave until the meeting concludes. Yet she and Master Silas leave for a business trip that she doesn't even have to go on, and then allows Mistress Melissa and Melmira to travel into town for a short holiday the exact same day? In truth, miss, all Master Krollien and Christine want is to return to Master Krollien's favorite of his 3 villas, the Sanguinis Vineyard. So, Master Krollien decided that day that he'd had enough, that if Lady Illsenia would not tell him why she'd gathered all of her children and their head servants here, he would merely find out for himself. You see, when Christine and Master Krollien arrived with Lady Illsenia and Mistress Melissa and Melmira in her deluxe carriage, it was revealed that she had brought a rather large and cumbersome locked trunk with her. Normally, this wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary, considering Christine's personal knowledge of Lady Illsenia and her penchant for bringing a great deal with her when she travels. But the sheer size of the trunk, as well as the fact that it was sealed with 3 locks, definitely raised an eyebrow. So, a week after Lady Illsenia departed with Master Krollien's baby brother, he had Christine pick the lock on the trunk. What was inside? Well, it certainly was not what Christine expected. Although, Christine didn't really know what she was expecting, she guesses. Anyway, inside the trunk was a torn-up, bloodied, white hooded cloak with some yellow braided cord on it. The blood had dried too long ago for Christine to be able to reliably tell what or whose blood it belonged to, though. Underneath that was a lot of sciencey-looking glassware and utensils. Or maybe it was for alchemy? Christine doesn't really know. Yeah, like beakers, alembics, pipettes, tubes, and various medical tools like syringes, scalpels, and clamps. A couple of them had a few different fluids in them that were clear or yellowy or black, and a lot of the beakers held what Christine thinks was blood. There were also papers which depicted human anatomy and sketches of muscle tissues, the brain, eyeballs, teeth, the heart, the lungs, the nervous system, and the circulatory system. Christine didn't dare touch too much, as the majority of all the glassware and metal tools were suspended on a metal rack-looking thingy, probably so everything would jostle around and break. But at the bottom, Christine saw a journal, tightly bound in black leather, with the cover molded into the shape of a monster opening a large toothy maw and magically sealed with a blood lock. Yeah, a blood lock. Oh, well, a blood lock is a magical paper seal with arcane markings on it, drawn in the maker's blood, that only releases its seal when the blood of the person who drew the seal is placed on it. Blood magic. Very old and very powerful. So, Christine knew there was no point in even trying to grab it. Lady Illsenia's blood seal was drawn in the center of the monster's mouth. Very spooky if Miss asks Christine. After Christine was finished, she rearranged everything exactly as it was when she found it, left no traces of fingerprints since she was wearing gloves the whole time, and locked the chest back up like she was never there. Miss wants to know what Christine and Master Krollien think is inside the journal? Well, neither Christine nor her master really know, but Master thinks that it's probably a very personal journal of some kind, probably connected to all that weird chemistry equipment that Lady Illsenia brought with her. Master Krollien thinks he might have a theory, though. Well... Oh! Shh! Master?
No. No more checkbooks.
What? Christina was not staring? Christine was merely checking to see if Master Krollien had woken up or not. If Master Krollien does wake up, Christine must ensure she is prepared to get up quickly and prepare Master some coffee. Anyway, what was Christine talking about again? Oh, right. Master Krollien has a theory as to what all of that weird sciencey equipment could be for. Master Krollien thinks that Lady Illsenia could be trying to develop a way to make her own vampires. Seriously. Well, as far as anyone knows, it's impossible to make a vampire. There are rumors that say if a vampire bites you, it could turn you into a vampire. But they're only rumors. In truth, the only force known today capable of turning someone into a vampire is the unknown method that the realm of Phantasmagoria used to turn the Nine. No one knows if they went to Phantasmagoria to be turned, or if it somehow manifested to come to them, or if the moon itself rained down vampirism on them. But the only way to become a vampire today is to be born as one. That's why you don't hear of many vampires, because every vampire today descends from one of the 9 first vampires in one way or another. And Christine may not be good with big numbers, but 9 is not a lot. Can a vampire and a non-vampire have a child? It's possible, but the chances of it being born as a vampire are extremely low. What? So, how would Lady Illsenia turn someone into a vampire then? Well, from what Master Krollien and Christine have read in some very, very old tomes, is that one of the 9, a former human healer who went by the Black Nightingale, actually hypothesized a way of transforming a human or a faunus into a vampire. She believed that through a series of intentionally placed and procedurally staggered vampire blood transfusions during a period of where the moon was in its harvest phase, one could theoretically transmute a human or a faunus into a vampire. However, the blood has to be distilled into a concentrated state, and at least a third of the subject's blood had to be drained first. A combination of morel mushrooms, hemlock, wolfsbane, milk of the poppy, lavender, and violet nightshade had to also be administered to help steal the mind of the subject. No, the recounts from Black Nightingale, which Master Krollien and Christine found, didn't mention her actually attempting it, if she ever did. So Christine has no idea if it would actually work or not. But she did say that the entire procedure would most likely be very risky and enormously taxing for the subject, both physically and mentally. Huh? What about the white cloak? Oh, Christine thinks that it may be related to all the other stuff, but Christine and Master Krollien are stumped. Christine's never seen anything like it before, and if it belongs to Lady Illsenia, why would she be carrying it around despite being torn and bloodied? Christine doesn't like all this not knowing, but for now, she and Master Krollien will continue to look for answers in these books. This book? Oh, the book Christine was reading through when Miss arrived is called A Consolidated Retelling of the Nine Throughout Recorded History by Professor R.H. Argyle. This is actually where Master Krollien and Christine first heard of the Black Nightingale. So far, it's also mentioned at least 4 others of the 9. The Red Knight, the Child King, the Wounded Swan, and the Inferno. Well, so far, besides the Black Nightingale, Christine has only read about the Inferno. Apparently, he got his nickname because he almost always has his Celine's inheritance activated, which allowed him to self-immolate, wreathing him in angry red and orange flames. Scary indeed, but Master Krollien could take him. What? Christine is serious. Christine's master is the strongest, and she believes with all her heart that her master truly could best any challenge that stood in his way. After all, Master Krollien's done so much, come so far, and grown so greatly despite having been given very little in comparison to his siblings. Christine truly could not be prouder to be his. His head servant, she means. If it's all right with Christine, Miss would like to hear the end of the Duarte story? Oh, yes. Christine has had to cut the story short twice now, so she supposes it's only fair. All right, Miss. What part had Master Krollien gotten to yesterday, during breakfast before Christine and her master left? Ooh, the part where Master Krollien lets Duarta go and the pudgy little human goes running off down the dirt road and into the woods. Master Krollien really did stop the best part. What happens next is Christine's favorite, although it was a new and rather awkward experience for her. So, Master Krollien told Duarta that their contract was over after throwing him outside and into the dirt. Duarta, without saying another word, scrambled to his feet and began running down the road and into the woods without even so much as a "Thank you, my lord," or anything. Christine watched him for a while with Master Krollien before he broke the silence by asking Christine if she knew how to take care of a rat infestation. Christine was confused. What an odd question to ask, she had thought at the time. She hadn't even seen a single rat since they had arrived at Duarta's villa. In fact, the whole vineyard was actually quite clean. Well, before Master Krollien and Christine had gotten there anyway. So, Christine looked up to her master and shook her head, saying, "No, Master Krollien." "How?" Master Krollien only smiled, his eyes never leaving Duarta as his rotund outline faded into the distance, and said, "When exterminating rats, best to dispense of them all, for if even one should escape, it will return in force with more. Oh, and bring me back proof of a job well done, won't you?" With that, he gave Christine a knowing glance before turning around and walking back into the villa. Christine just stood there for a moment before she turned back to look at Duarta, still scampering away in the distance, when she realized, "Oh, Duarta is the rat." Huh? Did Christine kill Duarta? Well, yes. Christine appreciates how satisfied you are, miss, and that you are not upset, despite him being one of your kind. You are right. Duarta definitely deserved it, although the sweaty human certainly made Christine work for it. By this time, the sun had already begun to go down, casting a calm orange light through the trees, and Duarta had covered quite a bit of ground by the time Christine had caught up to him. But Christine took after him at a full sprint, so when she slammed into his back, he fell right to the ground, belly first, with an ungraceful crash. Duarta immediately began to squirm, clawing at the leaves and howling for help. Christine was surprised how loud he could yell despite being drenched in sweat and out of breath. But she wasn't worried. He and Christine were in the middle of the woods after all, and we'd already dispensed with all of his hired muscles, so no help was going to come. Christine tried asking him politely if he would be willing to roll over so she could make his death quick, as she kept him pinned helplessly to the ground. But Duarta didn't really seem interested in listening. Christine tried to explain that she was new at being a head servant and had never done this before, and apologized if his death would be a little sloppy or clumsy. As Christine pulled out one of her sharper knives from its holster at her tailbone, she tried to ask him if he would politely stop squirming, as she did not want to miss a vital spot and make this any messier or more prolonged than it needed to be. But this only caused Duarta to yell louder. Seeing that Duarta had no intention of departing this world with any ounce of dignity, Christine dealt the finishing blow. After a few tries. What? Christine had never done this before. Duarta was her first kill. Everything before that had all been just training. Well, Christine will spare Miss the gory details, but by the time the job was finished, Christine was drenched in blood. The sun had gone down long ago. The almost full moon, now high in the night sky, bathed the forest in a silvery light. The forest was ear-splittingly silent aside from Christine's panting. Dispatching a target had been more exhaustive than Christine would have first thought, and as she stood back up, she wiped the sweat from her forehead, only to transfer some of the blood she'd gotten all over her arms to her face. Christine was so tired that she had almost made to leave before she suddenly remembered that Master Krollien had requested proof of a job well done. So, Christine knelt back down and carved out Duarta's heart before slipping it into her apron pocket and walking back to the vineyard. A human heart is something that's hard to fake, of course. Christine's arms and legs felt like they were made of lead, and when she returned to the villa, she found Master Krollien sitting in what used to be Duarte's special chair by the fireplace, a glass of wine swirling in his hand as he patiently waited for Christine to return. What about the fires? Oh, the fires that had consumed the horse stable and the servants' quarters had burned out a while ago by this point. Christine remembers seeing nothing but white smoke when Master Krollien first let Duarte loose, and when she was making her way back, the smoke had already stopped. Christine thinks that Master Krollien knew that, since neither building was connected to the main villa itself. The fires would simply fizzle out after they had exhausted all of their fuel instead of spreading and burning the entire estate down. Anyway, Christine approached Master Krollien, trying not to appear as tired as she was. Even though Christine had been silent as a mouse as usual, when she approached Master Krollien and opened her mouth to speak, he said, "Ah, Bunny, you've returned. How did it go?" Just like my master, Christine thought at the time. He could tell she was there despite not turning around once. Either that or Christine was covered in blood and probably reeked of both viscera and sweat. Christine stood up straight and answered, "Duarte won't be double-crossing you or anyone else ever again, Master." "Oh?" Master Krollien mused. "And I suppose you've brought back proof of this claim, yes?" he asked as he moved the wine glass from his right hand to his left and held out his now open palm expectantly. Christine approached, pulling the still warm organ out of her now ruined apron pocket and placed it gingerly in Master Krollien's waiting hand. Christine couldn't see Master's face very well, but she could tell his lips had curled into a smile as he examined the heart, before standing up slowly and suddenly tossing it into the fire. The fire in the fireplace almost seemed to swell as it consumed the heart of its former master. Then, Master Krollien placed his wine on the small table beside the posh chair and turned to look at Christine. Naturally, Christine held her arms close to her and looked down, embarrassed. She was sweaty, covered in the filthy worm's blood, and dirt and leaves were stuck to her shins and knees. But Master Krollien approached her and placed his hand warmly on top of her head, gently rustling her hair, and said, "Excellent work, my bunny. You did very well today." Christine couldn't believe her ears, which had been down the whole time, but instantly perked up. Christine turned her head upwards to look at Master Krollien, who was gazing down at her, smiling warmly and practically beaming with satisfaction and pride. Well, what does Miss think? Of course Christine turned bright red. She turned her face back down hurriedly so as to hide her burning cheeks and wide smile. Master Krollien had praised Christine once or twice before in the past, but never like this. Christine pulled her arms back to clasp her hands together behind her back as she thanked her master for his generous praise, when she suddenly noticed that she could not find the usual hard rectangular shape of the knife she stored behind her back in her apron bow. The realization sunk in that she must have dropped it in the leaves after carving out Duarte's heart, and had forgotten all about it in her exhaustion. By this time, it would probably be lost as the blood dried, gluing the leaves to it and obscuring it from detection. Master?" she whispered softly. Christine must have forgotten one of her bigger knives at the human's body." "Is that so?" Master Krollien mulled. Christine winced, knowing that punishment for her carelessness would no doubt follow suit. After all, Christine's knives are expensive to make, and the materials are equally pricey, and Master Krollien has to have them custom ordered and delivered from a contact of his in Helliger City, which is much further away from the Savoglio vineyard than Castle Volgenheim is. Instead, Master Krollien slid his hand from the top of her head and grasped her still bloodied upper arm in both hands before saying, "It served its purpose, so its loss is of no consequence to us. I will order a replacement for you in the coming days, Bunny. Worry not." Christine was stunned. This was the happiest Christine had ever seen her master, and, well, Christine had never been happier either. Master Krollien then pulled away one of his hands and looked at the syrupy crimson that now covered his palm and said, "Let's get you cleaned up now, shall we? I'm sure Duarte has a bath around here somewhere. After that, you and I will find whichever room that tub of lard used to call his bedchambers and guest chamber and settle down for the night. Tomorrow, I think we shall begin rebuilding this place and start cleaning up the rubble left behind by the stables and the servants' quarters, as well as burn all of the bodies that now littered the vineyard ground." Before leading Christine down another large, cozy hallway, Master Krollien's hand on the small of her back. "We're not leaving tomorrow, Master?" Christine asked, confused as Master Krollien ushered her on. Why would Master Krollien want he and Christine to start rebuilding a place that we just ransacked? "Actually," Master Krollien began to muse with a smile, "I quite like it here. Despite Duarte's slimy, two-faced smugness, he had decent taste in livery. The combination of wood, brick, and country-style plaster give the rather massive villa quite a cozy but luxurious feel. He has more than enough vases, display armor, and weapons, art, and other finery to suit my taste. And the idea of owning and running my own vineyard fascinates me. Think of all the wine, Bunny." As Master Krollien and Christine walked down the hall to the master bath chamber, she had to admit, it did sound quite nice. The countryside was beautiful, and the vineyard even more so, despite how much destruction we'd caused in the past 24 hours. "Ever since I'd left Castle Volgenheim, I've been looking for the perfect accommodation to suit my tastes," Master Krollien continued. "Duarte never paid me back all of the money he owed me, but I think we can consider the repossession of all of his property to be fair enough compensation, don't you? Welcome, Bunny, to our new home." "Thank you, human. Bunny is glad you liked it. It feels so long ago now, yet it almost feels like it occurred just yesterday." That was the day Christine knew that, no matter what happened, she would always be safe, always be happy, and always be home, as long as she was with Master Krollien, no matter where they went or what happened to the rest of the world. Master Krollien means so much to Christine. He's her whole world, her everything, and Christine truly hopes that, well, maybe one day she could maybe muster up the strength to tell Master Krollien how she really...
Excuse me, I did not mean to interrupt.
Interrupted? Interrupted what? Mr. Carlenn isn't interrupting anything. Oh, Master Krollien.
Good evening, Master Krollien. Apologies if I have awoken you prematurely. It is fine. I had not meant to nap this long anyway. Bunny, what is the human doing here? Why are you so beet red? Did you somehow manage to catch a fever or something whilst I was asleep?
No, Master Krollien. Christine, Bunny was only saying that, well,
Well, saying what?
Bunny was just saying, she was just saying that...
Huh, human? You say that Bunny was just wrapping up the story about Duarte and the Savoglio estate for you?
Oh, yes, Master, the Duarte story. That's what Bunny was doing. And yes, so it is, Master.
Well, I suppose that's fine. After all, you hadn't yet heard the end of the tale, and it is quite an enjoyable one, isn't it, Bunny? Anyway, I had only wanted to drop by to check on the miss and let her know that dinner would be ready to serve soon. Would you like to enjoy your dinner in the grand dining hall this time, miss? Excellent. And will Master Krollien and Christine be joining us in the grand dining hall again?
Christine thinks probably not, Mr. Carlenn. Now that the main study's roof is completely patched, Master Krollien and Christine will be enjoying their meal here, in private. Isn't that right, Master?
Yes, tell the kitchen servants to have somebody deliver to us our dinner here in the main study. I'd prefer us to eat by the fire, considering this continued torrent, and in solitude this time.
Oh, that reminds Christine, Master. Christine has a very special dessert planned for you tonight after dinner as well.
Oh?
Oh, yes. This morning, while Master was still asleep, Christine paid a visit to the two servants in the Castle Volgenheim's greenhouse out of curiosity of where the castle sources the honey they use in the kitchen, since Christine knows that Master likes only the best in his desserts. The greenhouse was huge and split down the middle into two smaller greenhouses, one being an actual greenhouse, the other being an apiary. There, Christine met an energetic blonde wolf named Arcadia and a very short, awkward little bear named Kayla. Apparently, not only does Arcadia painstakingly grow all of the flowers that are used in the bouquets that decorate and perfume the castle, but all of her flowers also provide the necessary nectar that Kayla's bees use to make their honey. Then, Kayla infuses the honey with specific notes like orange, peach, cinnamon, raspberry, lavender, hazelnut, pomegranate, and watermelon. Christine assumes that the two are best friends with not only each other, but a particular member of the kitchen staff as well. Kayla acts as somebody for Arcadia to socialize with and expend some of her hyperactivity, and Arcadia keeps Kayla accountable by not allowing her to eat any of the honey since Kayla's a little food obsessed.
Yes, those two are certainly something. At least their kitchen friend is a little bit more restrained than them.
Uh-huh. Lastly, Kayla delivers the honey to the kitchen's pâtissier, Allery, their friend in the kitchen, a focused but easily flustered raccoon who then uses the honey to create incredible desserts. He allowed Christine a look at the kitchen's dessert recipe book, which he wrote himself, and his clear sense of adventure has led him to create some truly mouth-watering sounding creations. Christine retrieved Master's favorite bottle of cooking blood and asked him to please make his best dessert. Christine taste tested it herself, and on Christine's life, Master, she swears that this is the best dessert Christine has ever tried. Allery is the only servant in all of Castle Volgenheim that Christine would ever trust to prepare a dessert for her master, using his custom cooking blood, besides herself, of course. So, tonight, after dinner, Master will be enjoying a croquembouche, each individual puff filled with blood-imbued dark chocolate raspberry mousse, and covered in sugar-spun golden honey drizzle, made using Kayla's specially crafted honey and infused with strawberry and hibiscus that Arcadia hand-grew herself. How does that sound, Master?
It actually sounds quite heavenly, Bunny. I am impressed. I have heard of these Taurus croquembouches before, but have never partaken of one myself. I'm sure you and I will enjoy it very much once we've finished our dinner together.
Wait, together? Christine gets to eat with you again, Master, and gets to eat dessert with you this time?
Well, of course, Bunny. After all, you put in all this effort to meet the servants that not only make it, but make the ingredients for it to prepare this for me. It seems a crying shame to enjoy an entire croquembouche all to oneself, doesn't it? You do like sweets as much as I, after all, don't you?
Oh, yes, Master, Bunny does. Bunny will happily join Master for dinner and dessert again then. If Master wants, that is.
Well, that sounds very nice. I am happy for you both, Christine and Master Krollien. Anyway, I also wanted to express my sincerest gratitude to you both for coming to check on my physical condition earlier in the day this morning. And to thank you, Christine, for this salve you prepared. It has worked wonders on my abdomen and lower back, and the healing properties of the salve itself are quite remarkable, I must say. Thank you.
Oh, it's no problem, Mr. Carlenn. Normally, this special healing mixture of Christine's is reserved only for Christine's master. But, in light of what happened, she felt that it would only be right to share some with you, Mr. Carlenn.
Oh, actually, I seem to have gotten a bit of a paper cut, just now, somehow, Christine.
Oh, are you okay, Master? Does it hurt? Are you bleeding? Do you require a hot towel or an ice pack or anything?
Well, I wouldn't mind some of your special salve, actually, to ease the pain.
Okay, Master. Christine will go and fetch a bandage strip really quick to halt the bleeding, and when she returns, she will apply the salve herself. In the meantime, Master, please keep your feet elevated, and Christine will be right back.
Well, I will return shortly to retrieve you when dinner is ready. Miss? Master Krollien? Oh, Wolf?